Thank you. Recall one. All right, and you need. So you want to get your Q&A. can't go much further because if I go down, it's in my screen.
Oh yeah, she's gonna speak too. But she's a person who will share. So they're gonna give her, somebody might put her the mic. Is there a speaker that's mic on hand? She won't be able to reach that. So you need a handheld one. Yeah, because she's in the wheelchair. But she won't be high enough to speak. But so we may. Everyone is saying that we may just take the mic right there. So just based on his view, let's have a mic.
So
she's gonna sing.
Then Bertha Maxwell.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Dean, Nancy is gonna bring support. So she's a person who, so she might need a handheld mic.
Okay. Just in case Dr. Maxwell wants to speak to mic and she can't get back.
Yeah.
We need to have it ready.
Have one nearby. Yeah. So
yeah, one of the text will be down there. One of the text will be down there. If they want to take a time, bring the video mic. So, is that fine now?
that's fine. That's fine. So dependent if he wants to actually pull her up there on the wheelchair or just bring it to the room, right? So we're gonna follow his speak. Okay. Camera No, we're just finalizing. We're ready. It's already live. So we are going to run. So once the drum is finished, then we start.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christopher Cameron. I'm Professor of History and Interim Chair of the Africana Studies Department. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the 13th Annual Bertha Maxwell-Roddey Distinguished Africana Lecture. Welcome to our students, faculty, and staff throughout the university, as well as members of the community, faculty from other local institutions who are joining us. Special welcome to Deans Gutierrez and Smale, Provost Lorden. We're excited to also have some of our city leaders in attendance today, including City Councilwoman Victoria Walkington, Mecklenburg County Commissioner Mark Jarrell, City Councilman Greg Phipps, and joining us virtually, the City Councilwoman Renee Johnson. And finally, welcome to our special guest of honor, Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey. Created in 2008, this lecture honors Dr. Maxwell-Roddey's pioneering contributions to the development of Africana studies as an academic discipline and to the building of Black cultural and intellectual institutions in the Charlotte region and in the United States. She was the founding chair of our department, founder and first chair of the National Council for Black Studies, and one of the founders of what is now the Harvey B. Gantt Center for African American Arts and Culture, among her many other accomplishments. This year, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the launch of the Black Studies program at UNC Charlotte, a process that began with student activism and protests in 1969 and saw the appointment of Dr. Maxwell-Roddey as the Black Studies program's first director in 1971. In 2023, we'll celebrate the 40th anniversary of the program's evolution to the Department of African American and African Studies. The department changed its name to Africana Studies in 2006 to highlight its strength and emphasis in the African diaspora. We serve over 50 majors and 36 minors. We have 9 core faculty members whose award-winning works explore the religions of the African diaspora, the Haitian Revolution, Black families in the United States, the history and culture of the Yoruba people, Black women in media, African folklore, slavery and environmental history in Brazil and Cuba, among many other topics. Our faculty's scholarship and teaching draws from a variety of disciplines, and we offer a number of exciting courses, both our majors and minors, as well as the broader student population, including courses such as Introduction to Health and Environmental Issues, African Diaspora Theory, Black Women in Film, African Civilizations, and African American Women's History, taught regularly by our keynote speaker and affiliate faculty member, Dr. Ramsey. In addition to our research and scholarship, our department emphasizes social justice and community engagement. And to that end, I'm happy to announce our recent creation of the Thomas Malik Tillman Scholarship. Malik earned his bachelor's degree from our department in 2015 at the age of 60, was enrolled as a master's student at UNC Charlotte at the time of his death in March 2017. Malik was a great friend to the department for many years and served as its liaison to the community in multiple capacities. We believe strongly in expanding educational opportunities for Black students in this region. We created this scholarship to continue his work and to honor his memory. The scholarship will be open to students who exhibit both academic excellence and a spirit of community service, with two of the requirements being the completion of a community-based project and demonstrated interest in pursuing community advocacy and social justice. We hope that you'll help support this endeavor by contributing whatever you are able to. If you are interested in learning more about our department, I suggest checking out the recently published book by former UNCC student Vanessa Gallman, titled "Who Am I? Memoirs of a Transformative Black Studies Program," which includes first-person reflections from our department's students and alumni dating back to the early 1970s. It's an invaluable history of both our department and of the broader university. I'd like to conclude by thanking everyone who has helped put this event together, including the techs, our faculty and student volunteers. Thank you to Professor Tamara Williams for arranging the wonderful drum roll that started this. And special thanks to our department's office manager, Rosie, who has expertly handled all of the many logistics of this event. We could not have done this without her, so thank you, Rosie, for all your hard work. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Nancy Gutierrez, Dean of the College of Arts and Science.
Good afternoon. So this is one of those events that sheriff department did not ask me to speak. I would muscle myself here and I would do it anyhow. I love this event. I've loved this event since 2008. And I'm delighted to welcome you to this 13th annual Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey lecture. This year we're experimenting with a bifurcated platform. It's both Zoom and face-to-face. Welcome to all of those people who are Zooming in. It does not mitigate this celebratory aura. Is always part of this lecture, always starting with prompts, which are a signature piece. At this lecture, I know I am part of history, and the history that Dr. Cameron began as he in his remarks. So I'm going to say this again because it bears saying. She began, Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey began her career by establishing the first programs in Black studies in the United States here in Charlotte. She co-founded the Harvard Grant Center for African American Arts and Culture, and she founded and served as the first chair of the National Council for Black Studies. These institutions are the channels by which the field of Black Studies has been nurtured and shaped. We honor Dr. Maxwell-Roddey today, and in each one of these lectures, by giving attention to new work in African studies. And today, even more pointedly than in previous lectures, given the topic and the speaker, we pay tribute to the grit and intellectual fervor of the woman who helped shape the department. Throughout her life, Dr. Maxwell-Roddey worked to make a difference in the world. She is a dreamer and a visionary, activist and builder, educator, and trailblazer. She is rightly the inspiration for our current reassertion of departmental civic action. This legacy is precious to the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. It is a badge of honor for the Department of African Studies. I'm very happy to be with you here as Dean of the College to commemorate Dr. Maxwell-Roddey's place in our institutional and national history, a place that does not just look backward to the past, but always forward to the future.
Thank you for those remarks, Dean Gutierrez. We're incredibly grateful for the continued support for this lecture by the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. We'll now hear from Gabrielle Bryant, voice major here at UNC Charlotte. We'll sing the first verse of Lift Every Voice and Sing, Black National Anthem. For those who are able to, please stand during the
Lift every voice and sing, earth and heaven, when because I know that the present is bright. Please in the right, incredible day. Let us march on to victory. It is Lord.
Thank you, Gabrielle, for that wonderful rendition. Incredibly grateful for your participation in this event. Now we will hear a few remarks from our special guest of honor, Dr. Maxwell-Roddey.
Greetings. First and first, I'd like to say greetings to the team, to the department chair, to all of the important guests, but most of all, to all of the students that are here. Course, so that really gave me a tremendous which said, hey, we're marching right on. I am very happy to have some of the students here with me. And if you don't mind, would you come up to the stairs? For instance, I know that well, all of you that Cheryl or but yes, some other here. The Griffin, Greg Davis, would you please come up? Yeah, you can come up here like that. All right. Do we have some others? Thank you so very much. And most of all, Dr. Herman Thomas. I especially just want to say just a word or two about some of my students. Perhaps one that started with me when he was in the 4th grade. Would you kind of raise your hand? Oh, because I don't know whether you can see it or not. This was one of my 4th grade student and 5th grade student, and he is involved in a lot of things, but most of all, he ended up in some big things, and I'm very, very happy to have you here, and thank you. Greg Davis, that's right, that's stand better than close. Used to better get close, so don't get too forward. Another student who has given so much of his time. The one thing that I really worried about Greg was when someone told him that because of a problem that he had, that he would be able to do just one thing. And I want you to know that he has read were 3 important things. had 2 other students, but they could not make it early. But some of the others who are up here, would you at least just say hello?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl Westmoreland Smith. I graduated in 1997, pledged Alpha Rho Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated on this campus. I hate to say that. Dr. Maxwell took over our line. I was number 29. I was also the first to graduate with a concentration in Black Studies. At the time, it was not a major, but a concentration. I was an English major with a concentration in African American Studies, and I'm very proud of that.
I think there's to be a question and answer. Is that right? Dr. Cameron? Then I wouldn't dare keep more than my 10 hours. I mean, not 10 hours. That was a boo-boo. But I'm sure that you're going to tell some of the stories or answer some of the problems that we've had. Thank you so very, very much, Doctor. I'm just thrilled to be able to be here with this time for the 13th. And I'm certain I'll make it the 15th and 16th lecture, but I want you to know that I certainly am going forward with this 13th. Thank you. For those in the audience, I might add that I am loyal, grade, blind, and that's a little of my 4-year history, but grade is much more than that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maxwell-Roddey, for sharing these stories with us. The work and example is continuing inspiration for our students and our faculty. And it's one of the great honors of my career to be able to hold the same position that you did at this university. I'm happy that we get to hear even more about your life impact in this region with today's keynote. Now, Dr. Crystal Eddins, Assistant Professor of African Studies here at UNC Charlotte, will introduce our keynote speaker.
How do I change it?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. For those who are here and those who are in the virtual space, I have the pleasure and the honor of introducing our speaker for this evening, Dr. Sonia Ramsey. Sonia Ramsey grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and attended Howard University, where she received a BA in journalism and a minor in U.S. history. After working in the public relations field in the Washington, D.C. area, she received her master's and PhD in United States history from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She began her academic career in Texas as a lecturer and later as an assistant professor of African American history at the University of Texas at Arlington. After receiving tenure, she returned to North Carolina to join the history faculty at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. An associate professor of history and women and gender studies, Dr. Ramsey currently serves as the director of women and gender studies here at UNC Charlotte as well. She specializes in African American gender history, the history of education, and Southern history. An experienced oral historian, she was one of the original interviewers in the Behind the Veil project, documenting the Jim Crow South, sponsored by Duke University and the Ford Foundation. Dr. Ramsey is the author of several historical works, including Reading, Writing, and Segregation, A History of Black Women Teachers in Nashville, published by the University of Illinois Press. Her recent book, of which aspects of today's talk will be based, Bertha Maxwell-Roddey, A Modern Day Race Woman and the Power of Black Leadership, will be released by the University Press of Florida in spring 2022. A political biography of Charlotte educational activist Bertha Maxwell-Roddey, this book modernizes the turn of the century term race woman and describes how she and her peers turned hard-won civil rights and feminist triumphs into tangible accomplishments from the late 1960s to the 1990s. Maxwell-Roddey, born in Seneca, South Carolina in 1930, became a Charlotte desegregation Black Studies torchbearer as one of the city's first Black women principals of a white elementary school in 1968, and as the founding director of UNC Charlotte's Black Studies program in 1971. A cultural advocate in 1974, she co-founded Charlotte's Afro-American Cultural and Service Center, now the $18 billion Harvey B. Gantt Center for African-American Art and Culture. As a national figure, Maxwell-Roddey served as a forerunner who helped to institutionalize the field of Black Studies as the founder of its premier professional organization, the National Council for Black Studies, in 1975. She later rose to become an innovative leader in one of the most influential Black women's organizations in the US, as the 20th national president of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated from 1992 to 1996. Dr. Ramsey is an academic research fellow at the Benjamin Hooks Institute for Social Change, sponsored by the University of Memphis, and she co-edits the book review section of the History of Education Quarterly. She also serves on the editorial boards of the American Historian magazine and the North Carolina Historical Review. She recently received a 2021 UNC Charlotte Capitalism Studies research grant to help support her new scholarly project, focusing on the history of African American women factory workers in the Carolinas from the 1960s to the 2000s. As an active faculty citizen, she continues to serve in mentoring roles toward numerous junior faculty, such as myself and students. As a member of the Charlotte Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Dr. Ramsey serves on its Heritage and Archives Committee. Influenced by Dr. Maxwell-Roddey's early public history efforts, she has become dedicated to uncovering the hidden collections of African American women, often found in untold attics, basements, and garages. And she remains determined to chronicle the sometimes overlooked, but nevertheless extraordinary historical experiences of African American women in the last half of the 20th century. So join me in welcoming Dr. Sonia Ramsey.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Check her mic.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Okay, can you hear me now? Thank you. Oh, well, I'm going to rewind, and I just want to thank. Okay, I want to thank my history department colleagues, my women and gender studies colleagues, of course, Africana Studies, Dr. Cameron, Dr. Edis. Did I want to mention your book again? Rituals, Runaways, and the Haitian Revolution, Collective Action in the African Diaspora, Associated, hot off the prison. I want to say all of Dr. Students who came here today, somewhere in the Zoom sphere. I want to thank our colleagues, thank my doors, the data, and I sure hope I got to everybody again, but I'll thank you on the tail end if I didn't get you together as well. So we have, I think this is 2008, the annual Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey Africana lecture has brought in speakers of world-renowned international speakers, scholars in healthcare, politics, city politicians, really movers and shakers in the city, the nation, and the world. But it's time to come home. It's time to come home and learn what's going on here. And I'm so fortunate and so honored to be able to speak about the subject of my reading, my recent book, my latest book, Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey. So it was an actual lecture that I came upon the idea to write about Dr. Roddey. So I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta that I haven't seen my dudes in a while, though. It's so high. And I was sitting at the annual lecture, and I knew that name is so very wide. Do I know that name? And when she brought her in and the doctor stood up and said, "Oh my goodness." So if you remember the story, doesn't share with you. And so I said, "Oh, she's here." And I realized she founded the African Studies department. And then I found she co-founded the GAN Center. Then I found that she was one of the first Black women principals of the elementary school in this. And it doesn't stop. It keeps going on and on. And she founded the National Council for Black Studies. I said, that is my subject. That is my subject. So I've done a wonderful journey of talking with Dr. Roddey. I would go visit with her every 2 weeks. And every 2 weeks, she'd come up with something new that she had done and discovered and initiated. As a cultural builder, institution builder, she's done so many things in the city and the nation, and I'm just going to share an aspect of her life, of all the things that she's done, and focus on Africana Studies today. And while we're focusing on Africana Studies, I'm going to do kind of a history of the Africana Studies program, which eventually becomes the department. It also is a lens to look at the larger, broader issues facing Black studies, which is kind of the general term for Africana Studies. And also look at what it means to be a segregated university. I want to talk about how Dr. Roddey brought a university beyond the idea of having a few Black students. Oh, that's great, to being a student where those students feel that this university was their own university. So I'm just going to talk through that. And I hope we have that question answered. I can have some of the comments from the students. Some of you that you saw up here, I'll be quoting you that they are still very much involved in Dr. Roddey's life. So, first, I want to just talk a little bit about Dr. Roddey's background. So, when she grew up, she was born in 1930 in Seneca, South Carolina. Here's another twist to the story. My mother's family, my family, they're all from Westminster, which is 3 miles from Seneca, South Carolina. So, I am not quite related, but I'm related to Dr. Roddey. Somebody in there is related to Dr. Roddey's family. We're all related down there. So Seneca is near Greenville, South Carolina, near Clinton. It's the Piedmont area, not the Charleston part, so it's a little bit closer to Atlanta. So she grew up, and she lived in a unique way. She was raised by her grandmother and grandfather. Her mother worked in Charlotte, kind of saved money, and she grew up nearby a college called Seneca Institute, a private school for African Americans. So although her family wasn't that wealthy, she grew up in the background of college. So some of the students would come to pick her up when she was little and take her to go get candy. So she grew up around this intellectual community. Another unique aspect is that she also grew, her home was also nearby to the home of a local dentist who very prominent dentist in Seneca. It actually has its own museum, Dr. Bundy. And she grew up having her house had the only bathroom in the area. So these great dignitaries would come to this stay at her home. Madam Mary Church. Mary McLeod would do. Because they had the bathroom. One time Dr. Roddey said, when she was small, how did she get the good room? But we were just be quiet. And so what I wanted to talk about also with Dr. Roddey, she graduated when she was 16. And you had to move out of South Carolina if you wanted to go to college or move away from the little town. So she moved first to Washington, D.C., and then she decided to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. And Charlotte was where her mother was as well. And she attended Johnson first, before she became an education minister, she wanted to actually go into nursing. So while she lived in Washington, D.C., she applied to be to the nursing program at Johns Hopkins, or the Johns Hopkins University, they say. But Johns Hopkins at the time did not allow blacks in the program. But she did pass the exam, but if she had decided to attend, she would have broken another barrier. So that leads to another discussion with Dr. Roddey that's prominent in my book. We often hear of civil rights activists who are the first person, and the NAACP broke the barrier to black women, and that's, we need to know that. There are also untold thousands of people, African Americans, who were first, who their stories are untold, and they were first, and beyond being first, they held the door open. So Dr. Roddey was she often was at first, but she tried her best not to be an only last. Okay? So moving on, as she graduates from Stephen University and starts teaching, she decides in 1964 to enroll in the graduate program into a degree program. She's the first, then becomes the first Black person to graduate in a master's in educational administration from that school, kind of right here by school. She also did a PhD in 1974 from Union College. So that's her background, and I could go a lot more into that. But when she first starts teaching, she worked at a segregated school called Alexander Elementary School in the first ward, which is now inside and over downtown, I guess. Yeah, right. And so she had a principal there named Janie Hinsdale. And Janie Hinsdale symbolizes the strong Black women principles they had at that time. And Dr. Roddey looked at her leadership and modeled herself after her leadership. So she grew up with her career kind of came forward by looking at the leadership of strong Black women. So she learned how to do that, incorporate some of those techniques and practices into her daily life as an educator. Also in 1964, she noticed that the children in the first ward did not have access to kindergarten. Now, we think kindergarten, go put your kid in kindergarten, but they did not have any kindergarten. And if they did at the time, you had to pay. The people could not pay for that. So she got her fellow teachers together, and she asked them to work for free during summer. And she started what's called the Charlotte Teachers Corps. And the Charlotte Teachers Corps did educational enrichment. They took them on field trips. They were there to help the children, the kindergarten, learn early reading techniques, to learn how to read. Now, how many of us could get some of our colleagues to work for free during the summer? So think about that. So it symbolizes her ability to get people to join in with her to do something good. And I'll call that and talk a little bit more about that in cultural advocacy. That's what I kind of gave it a term to it. So after she gets her graduate degree, she goes to, she's going to tell you this story. I always say all the time. But while she was in graduate school, there was an older gentleman there who would just talk to her and talk to her. She just would chat with him and whatever. And she did not have any kind of idea of being intimidated by anybody, or either that she's in awe of people, or that she is better than anybody else. She's on the same level. And so she's talking with this older gentleman, and one of her fellow students said, you're talking to the dean. You're talking to the dean. She said, okay. And so she became friends with him, kind of. So after she finished the program, of course, he was aligned with the superintendent in Charlotte, because they all kind of knew each other, and they wanted her to be a principal. She's like, I don't really want to be a principal. That's another thing we see with Dr. Roddey, that she is kind of thrust into leadership. She didn't step into it, pushed it to very briefly. So they did, they kind of cajoled her into doing it. She becomes the principal of Morgan Elementary, rather. Morgan Elementary was a segregated school. Now, meanwhile, we're in the middle of the segregation crisis in Charlotte. So one of the things they decided to do, and other urban southern cities, is to close African American schools as part of the segregation plan. And they decided, there you have a loss of principals, loss of teachers. It's very wrong to do election of sexual math by itself. But her Morgan school was going to close. So she took it upon herself after she got community support to get a bus for the students and done all these things for the students. She took it upon herself to go to the white schools to see where her students are going and make sure they were going to treat her right. And she did get a little flack from one of the principals, and she went right to the superintendent and said, he better get himself straight over there at that school. So she was also able to form allies and allyship to make the ally do ally work too, not just the name. So So she also fought to protect her teacher at school, so she was able to bring her teacher. So the thing they wanted her to do was be principal of a new school in Albemarle Elementary School. It was so new, just being built. She would be one of the first black. Now there was another black woman they had was a principal, but it was much more mixed race school. But her school, there were 300 students and 2 black students or something like that. So not too many, and they would take that to school. Inner college would take that to school sometimes. So here she is, a black woman in 1968 in an old white school as the principal. So she had parents who were not happy that she was black. She had some parents not happy that she was woman. She had some parents not happy that she was both. But she's not just fighting those racial battles. She took it upon herself to bring innovation to the school. From her graduate program, she learned this idea called the open walls concept. And they would initiate that into Charlotte a few years later, where you have team teachers and you co-teach on same subjects. She revitalized the PTA and created one there. She brought in parents who had expertise in certain areas to come to the children. She did so many dynamic things. She was recognized by the National Elementary Educators Association. But at the same time, she had a lot of problems. While the students loved her, the parents had issues. The parents had issues. She had one parent threatened to, really upset and wanted to have a black teacher fired. He said, "We're not going to fire that teacher." He said, "I'll take it to the board." And so she invited the school board in to the meeting at the school. They go right ahead. And so she would do these things, and the person was so intimidated by having the whole school board knowing they were going to support Dr. Roddey. So she was a person who used her advocacy to likability factor, but she knew how to step ahead and push forward when necessary as well. So all of that drama at that school. She thought she would just make it change. So at a workshop one day, she met Dr. John Chase. So he was the head of the College of Human Development here at fledgling new university called UNC Charlotte. It's only been open a few short years as a university there. So she had also done evaluated student teachers who didn't do so well. They were kind of bad reviews. And she just thought Dr. Chase would not like that. So lo and behold, he had offered her an idea of coming to work there, and she said, "Oh, I don't know." So she rethought it, talked to him again, and she said, "I thought you wouldn't want me because I didn't give that good review." And she said, "That's exactly why I wanted to do this." So she comes to UNC Charlotte in 1970, and she said, "I came to teach teachers. I didn't know a thing about Black studies." Meanwhile, things were happening. So just a little segue on the history of UNC Charlotte. It's such a unique history. First, it started in 1946, really as a night school for returning veterans from World War II. It was all white. They had one black school, one black thing, sponsored by the UNC at the time. After a few years, they realized they were going to close the UNC, was going to close the night school, and one of the teachers there, Bonnie Cone, you ever heard before Bonnie Cone? Right there. Bonnie Cone there, she said, "I don't think so. I don't want to. We got to keep this school." So she worked with Dr. Gutierrez, who eventually became a school board chairperson, and they proceeded on this fantastic journey of creating a school and making it a university. So they got bonds from the city. They worked with the top leading businessmen to bring the concept of a public university to Charlotte. So we did not have one, and bring a low-cost university education. So it was a community college, but in 1949, when they got their bond, they created 2 colleges, one for Black students, Carver College, and one for white students, Charlotte College. And that became an issue in 1961. The doctors in Charlotte students to have that be one university, to not be segregated. But they did not successful. Eventually, were not successful. Eventually, they were able to make UNC Charlotte a part of the 17-member school now of UNC system, and Carver College becomes morphed into a Central Piedmont University. So in 1965, when this university formally began, and it began segregated university on paper. So we'll see what happens. All right. Meanwhile, so many things happen. So Dr. Roddey is coming to UNC Charlotte and thinks she's going to relax and teach teachers and no drama. But meanwhile, something's going on that might change her path. The rise of the Black student movement. So we have the civil rights movement. right? And we have the Black Power movement. And offshoots of that were students who had been admitted to predominantly white schools, but found that there was nothing there for them. Very isolated, no courses about any of their experience. They weren't even acknowledged as having experience or having history or having anything relevant to knowledge about. And one aspect of the Black Power movement and the legacy of the movement is to push for Black studies to learn about the experiences of people of African descent and have that incorporated in the university setting. So as we go through the Brown district, right in the South, you do see in the NAACP, you do see more and more people getting integrated into white universities. So if you think about it, a few years before, these students may have been the first Black students at their university. And here, a few years later, they're having protests at these universities about that. So protests in 1960 around 8 erupted in San Francisco State, they erupted at Yale University all over the country, and even at historically Black universities who wanted to turn their university from a Negro university, they only taught the white focused subjects, to a Black university. And so everything was disrupted. So this is happening. So in the South, you had several things going on, as these people again had just fought into segregation now. But you have unfortunately the Orangeburg massacre of 1968, where 3 students at South Carolina State were unfortunately murdered by the police. That hit these students, just as Emmett Till hit earlier students in the civil rights movement. So the few Black students in Charlotte had wanted to form a Black student union patterned after the Black activism, and they weren't getting too far with the administration. No. And they were pushing for that because they wanted to have it recognized by the school. So this is just a picture of the Black student union, some of the members there. So what they decided to do to commemorate the Orangeburg massacre is they decided to have a protest on campus, and they said to lower the American flag and raise the Black national flag, red, black, and green. And they proceeded to do that, and it's what they're up for. They're also supported by civil rights activists, Dr. Original Hawkins. So these are some of the leaders, and I couldn't get all of them in the picture. They're definitely not all of the leaders of the movement. And I got this photo from the yearbook, and I know that's Ron Caldwell. I want to know.
Okay, now I can get to.
There you see Dr.
Yeah, how did I get this sent to?
Sorry, he was
Came up, but I don't know how to get back.
Ready, who could have a lecture on his own, artist, poet, reporter, activist. You see Humphrey Cummings, an attorney, Bruce Sloan. You see Ben Chambers and our own David Sanders here there as part of the movement. They were definitely not all, they were just pictures that we have. So they think about that. They've been first generation students. Well, their parents raised up everything to get them to college. And just as today, going to college is a big deal. And they have to go and protest and face exposure. They took that risk because they wanted to make their school a better place and have more equity at their school. So after they took down the flag, they didn't get much response. So they came back and with 10 points, 10 demands, just similar to the Black Panthers, and they kind of staged a protest in administrative field. So there you see Bonnie Cone coming in to negotiate with them. Bonnie Cone, the unique person, founder of the school, was also very much supportive of the Black student community, Charlotte. So she probably was one of the key reasons you can chaos erupt at the university. You get some of these other schools as well. So eventually, like in spring, they do approve a Black student union. And part of their 10-point plan, one of the demands they wanted was the Black Studies program. So in 1969, what do you do when you have to start something new in a university? You form a committee, right? So they form a committee, and it had Black Studies faculty, the dean, they had students, and they had to first figure out what was Black Studies? What are they trying to do? So they started one course. And so they were looking for a department, chair of the department director. And they sent out applications, didn't have much luck, because this is a new school. It's not, it's fledgling. The buildings are erupting before your very eyes of the school. You had a population of about 3,500 students. So it was new, and some of your more distinguished people are like, I don't know if I want to teach there. So But what we see is they turn to the second Black faculty in the school after Julie Powell, Dr. Maxwell, or Bertha Maxwell. And she is in the college development. She serves on the committee. She said, okay, I can help. So she had to, so I have this quote that former superintendent William Phelps said about her. When he said sarcastically to the committee, if you want Black studies, then hire her. If you don't want Black studies, then you better not hire her because she's going to get it. You know, who wanted it. And she did get it. So first, she also had to get the approval of the students. She didn't want to do that without their approval. Really, they're the reason why they had the budget in the program. She goes to the meeting and they see this professional educator, former principal, and they say, "Who are you? Are you with the establishment?" I'm paraphrasing. And she's like, "Oh, whatever you want to think. I have the skills to run this program." And she had a little salty tongue. She could go toe to toe with them, so they thought she was okay. So there she is. Now she's the new director. What she has to do? She has to figure out what is Black studies. What is it? This is a unique field created from activism. It is not a canon for thousands of years, but there were early Black studies statistics. W.B. Du Bois, George Washington Carver, and Cooper, who wrote as individuals about the need to collect information about Black people and disseminate it. But there weren't formal college programs. So she started on a new ground. You know,
I don't know how to send that.
workshop to go to. She had to do it on her own. But she wanted to learn, so she goes to Atlanta to visit the Institute of the Black with scholars, Vincent Harding, and he's a very famous person.
You're
So she brings it
all after, so.
He's like, well, you're at a prestigious white university. I think I should have you pay a lot of money. And she's like, I'm not paying any money. You're going to teach me Black studies. She tells them, and they end up becoming friends. So she said, these students, we don't have any money. We didn't, we're going to teach me. And so he did. So she studied. So that also is a lesson to learn if you're new. Just study, do the research, find out what it is. She's studying the theory of Black studies, different theory concepts. So she could be grounded. You had to create a curriculum out of nowhere. All right, so she does create this curriculum, and she focuses on not just the academic side things. She focuses on what are students going to experience when they're at this school, and so she wanted them to become whole. She didn't want them to become isolated and become lost in the university. So her curriculum is patterned after four kind of things. She grew from Black studies and also from her history and her knowledge of teaching in the segregated schools and the desegregated schools. And so she wanted students to learn four concepts of awareness, consciousness of those factors which shape individual spatial sensibility. She goes through a catharsis. So, or to remove the barriers which prevent ideas and feelings from being brought to the level of reflection. And then she wanted to do Black functioning, to be active participation in improving the day-to-day living situation of Black people as defined by Black people. And then finally, liberation, to be free, to lose all this knowledge of free people. And it was centered around these each year, four different things of who am I, where you learn self-discovery in your courses, what am I doing here, right? Where did I come from? That's the history highlight. And then where am I going? And so out of those broad areas became classes. Now, the Black Studies program was a vigorous program. It was not trying to help students who had to learn, get to know what you're doing to be in their program. And you also was grounded in traditional courses as well. But one of the things it also did was address several different areas. Now we say wellness, but they had the Black Studies program had Dr. Billy Ford, who did counseling. They counseled students. Imagine us having professors out here having to counsel our students. They did that. They had to counsel them. They also had these group encounters where students were learning how to identify with their culture, having to learn breathing techniques, early yoga techniques to provide wellness and peace to students. Okay? So, and she also did stuff about race and how you identify yourself, how you identify yourself in the world, to try to get these students to have a sense of self and identity as Black people in a white university. She also, beyond those kind of wellness activities, initiated a concept where she wanted her students to be ready. It's often heard, sometimes you may even hear it today, unfortunately, what are you going to do with a degree in Black studies? What? Well, she knew what. She'd get a job, that's what she would say. So she started having students go beyond norm. They had to do a senior thesis in their Black Studies minor and major. They had to do internships in the community. They had high rigorous courses, and even a classroom course. Black Studies students in what's called the block of courses, they had to sit in the front row. They had to speak up. They had to be prepared and make their presence known. They weren't the people that had to be helped. They were going to help people. They were going to be a presence of leaders, not just leaders throughout the university. So they were going to be poised and prepared to take those steps in the future. She also, as a core foundation of Black Studies, she wanted the students to be community engaged. Right? So as part of the student internship, that she used her contacts throughout the community. She had a whole life before she went to USC Charlotte as a community activist. So they worked in public health. They worked in the police station. They worked in all different aspects of public service, nonprofits. They worked in businesses, banks, insurance companies, whatever thing they were majoring in. She found an internship for them to do in certain ways. So they also built it.
There's a little rice left. Don't throw it out.
Students weren't just students at UNC Charlotte. They had to engage in the community as well. Also, I had the opportunity to hear Dr. Stephanie Pickett in her recent lectures on diversity that was going on campus, and I also had to hear an opportunity to hear in another lecture. And she talked about creating on campus for a culture of belonging. And I heard that and it just rang home. I said, a culture of belonging. I realized Dr. Roddey had done this 30, 40 years ago. A culture of belonging simply means going beyond having students in seats, but making them feel home, making them feel like this is their place. They're not outsiders, they're not on the outer rim, they're inside, making them feel a part and whole of the university. So in our office, or Simple Black Studies office, they created what's called a home away from home. You see, now this first picture, I think he might be smoking, but we don't do that these days. I'm kind of put it on, just FYI, so don't do that. But that was really a home away from home. But here you have Dr. Ruby Thomas, Dr. Roberta Duff. They're in the office, and Dr. Roberta Duff helped Dr. Maxwell-Roddey, their support staff, and she went beyond the call of duty. She helped students outside of school, and you could bring your lunch to the Black Studies office. You could go type your term papers in the Black Studies office. You could watch the soap operas there if you wanted to. Now, some of the other faculty were like, what is going on in that office? But they didn't care. They wanted to create a home away from home for these students, and a refuge sometimes if they hadn't been treated too well in their classes. They sit in the Black Studies office, get regroup themselves. Also, she started when she noticed that the orientation was nothing like today on the computer. You actually had to go line up in person with a card and do your orientation for your classes. That she and Dr. Thomas and Dr. Dan Carver and other Black Studies professors would go down there and meet those students who were like, hello, students, and why don't you join the block in Africana Studies? And also she started orientation programs, which eventually we would have even more orientation programs. We'll talk about that. So she's building, not just doing Africana Studies, she's building institutions, she's building programs, she's building a framework for how you make a student sustain at the university, beyond just simple curriculum courses. So, a home away from home. So she couldn't do it at all without the support of her faculty, her voting faculty, our partners in big trouble investing. So you have Dr. Roberta Duff, I give her honorary doctorate. You have Dr. Mary Harper, who helped co-found the Dance Center. She was an English professor and recently, unfortunately, passed away recently, but she was known for having students do the most rigorous of English courses. You had to take your course. You also have Dr. Billy Ford in counseling, and then you have Dr. Roddey side by side with her co-conspirator, Dr. Dan Carver in English. Dan Carver was such an advocate for Black studies that she talked so much to other faculty. They're like, just we don't let Ann talk to us. We'll do whatever you favor. We don't let Ann talk to us. But she eventually, Dr. Roddey, they worked together and they found the Women in Studies program, which I happen to be the director. So I see a direct legacy there. You also have David Fry in sociology. You have here in front of us, we're getting right now, Dr. Thomas, so many things she's done for the program, the director. And you have Dr. Greg Davis, who came later as one of Dr. Roddey's students. We'll talk about that later. And you also have in the up corner here, Alice Case. So I wish I had a good picture of her, but she's an extraordinary person. She $175,000 to the new UNC Charlotte to promote scholarships for Black students and later the Black Studies program. So how can you know you have a benefactor, you know, who could do so much to you when you have that benefactor there? But Dr. Roddey managed her own program. Dr. Tate, but she befriended Alice Tate. That Alice Tate even visited her home. They visited each other, became dear friends, and she really thought the Black Studies program was doing something special in this world. So she's always great. So what she ended up doing is endowing this year, providing the funds to make an endowed here. So Dr. Maxwell becomes the first endowed here in Black Studies, and one of the first women endowed here in Black Studies is you today. Also, the other two people I want to talk about is, of course, Bonnie Holmes, the founder of UC Charlotte. She is also a supporter of the Black Studies program. And also, Lloyd Witherspoon, the head of studies at the time, he's also a supporter as well. So she had her allies, so she's also superior. And then she also wanted to work with those, like the head of the engineering department, who looked a little sad to this thing called Black Studies. What is that? And she was able to win over. She thought, if you could bring your enemies over and win them over, you have done something. Right? So she believed in doing that as well. Also, we want to also talk about, we talked about the activists. Some of these were activists, with others were students. So many students were integral in the lives of Dr. Roddey's program. So her students are here today. I just want you to know how many of us are going to have our students 40, 50 years later. I'm sure I'm glad to think about that. But some of these students had potential. You do not have these kind of things where you're a student, you do what students do, I'm a professor. They call her Bertha. You can call her Bertha. Yeah. And if they have leadership potential, she put them in leadership roles. She did not care. If she was doing an advocate to try to get more Black professors and administrators on campus, she takes a student with her to see how it works, to help her. She took them along with her. She believed in fomenting and training leaders, but also letting them lead, having the ability to lead if they have the potential. Some of those pictures I want to think that's she's right from me. Cheryl was smaller, the first graduate there, so she is the picture. You have that's James Culver, he's a reporter for the Charlotte Observer. You have Elaine Nichols, the curator of Smithsonian, and Diane Bennett, who's the one to help Dr. Roddey for Delta Initiative for Habitat for Humanity as president. So I could give you many more photos. These are just photos I had and some of the photos of the people I talked to. And also Vanessa Galvin's book has a lot of other faculty members. And there's the pictures there with Dan Carver and Cheryl Wilson and Dr. Thomas. Now, this gentleman in the middle, I did not have a chance to interview. I just saw his picture in the yogurt. I thought it was fabulous. Everybody knows who he is. Please share. And the bottom is another picture of Dr. Roddey. Come back to this chart. Also, so I'm talking about Dr. Maxwell at the University of Western Suffolk. And I also talked about being a believer in community engagement, not just for students, but for herself as well. But when Dr. Mary Harper needed an advocate to promote her dissertation, she asked Dr. Roddey to help her with the aspect of her dissertation to start a cultural center. And Dr. Roddey said, okay, I'll do that, I'll help you. And she helped, she really helped. She helped form the board of distinguished city leaders and movers and shakers in Charlotte. She helped get funding for the center. And so also she entrusted, they run the center, Dr. Thomas, who we mentioned earlier on the board, and she had other UNC Charlotte people help and had student opportunities there. So Charlotte, again, is trying to be a city, a part of what's called the New South, the urban South. It's growing here. We're not a dead city, we're a growing, vibrant city. So buildings are sprouting up all over. And you have new banks coming up who need to have people come in. So you have this new pressure having the city create more cultural. But at this time, in 1974, there were very few little cultural opportunities for African Americans sponsored by the city at the time. So the Afro-American Cultural Center becomes really the focal point, the center of cultural activities for Black life in Charlotte. And so and that's the story itself, it's a lecture itself. But over the years, the center would grow, it would struggle to get funding, with funding discrepancies with other organizations. We have in 1986, they do a massive fundraiser, a capital campaign. They were to move to the old Blue Rock AME Church, and they raised $1 million in about 5 or 6 years. And so they got donors from all over the country helping. and had city leaders and Harvey Gann also helped eventually too. And Dr. Tom Gutierrez was involved in that as well. So we have a vibrant cultural center that's struggling to get funding, even though it's a beautiful building. Eventually, they get a donation from the Malik collection of art, and eventually they become part of this uptown public-private initiative to bring art to the inner city area. And so you have a working of the recently constructed in 2009, I guess Harvey began Center for Art and Culture. If you've ever been there, it's a beautiful structure, it's a beautiful building. And so all of this is from this idea of Dr. Roddey, Dr. Harper. So what does Black Studies do? It builds culture that are lasting, that beyond, we carry on the legacy beyond the financial story, are extending beyond. So you take a city. So what she knows, as we know, as administrator, I'm a very new administrator, but you have to go through those channels, proper procedures and permissions for just about everything. And so you have to get the food, you get the curriculum, you get the major, food. And so through that, it's not always learning. So with that struggle, Dr. Roddey was facing in her major, she taught other people in the community help, other Black studies practitioners and from nearby. And she thought there needs to be a national organization to help Black studies directors to support, provide advice, and to provide an accrediting body to help community credit. So she makes this call, she calls for a convention, and they come to Charlotte to meet. Now these fellows, mostly the fellows, were activists with the dashiki and the Afro activists. They were ruthless, and here she is, and they meet with her, and they want to form this organization. And she's asked, and I get to that in a second. When they form this organization, she learns from them. She learns some of the theoretical concepts. They're creating knowledge, and she also, what she shares with them, her administrative type, because these early administrators Black studies could not sustain itself and lasted without these early administrators who had to keep a program going. So you can have all the grand ideas you want, but if you don't have a program, yay, what's happening? So she was able, so they respected her. She was also able, because she came outside of Black studies, to calm them down. It could be a little angry, something, a little passionate sometimes, So she was able to bring them. James Turner, the former head of Cornell University's African Studies Department, said Dr. Roddey was task-oriented. We were not just going to have a conversation. There were all these internal debates between Pan-Africanists, cultural nationalists, and those who follow the beliefs of Malcolm X. Dr. Roddey had the command to tell us to be quiet. Let's do this now. And all of these virile, strong-willed brothers would say, yes, ma'am. All right, Sister Bertha. She didn't carry any internal baggage, because she came from the outside of the Black movement. She was a neutral broker. You give her credit, she goes, respectful relations, all of those people. And if you go see Malik Faranga, founder of Kwanzaa, like, oh, Sister Bertha. And actually, the National Association of Black Studies called her the Queen Mother of Black Studies. So I don't know if she likes to say so, but the Queen Mother of Black Studies. And so she helps get the organization launched. But she had no problem stepping back if it meant the organization. So she would negotiate it. One person wanted to have the convention at his city. She let him be the director, right? So she did. She took a back kind of a seat role, I guess. And so some of the history don't mention her as much as they should. So I'm happy my book will kind of put her back in the prominence of where she should be as a form of creative institution, scholarly institution or studies program. So we have with Dr. Roddey also Black Studies, began Center, a new curriculum. She also believed in history, but she also believed in supporting Black women studies. So she created one of the first Black women studies courses in Charlotte, in the South. It was called Black Women in America Against God. And she talked about Black women figures throughout history and in society. She also gave a local focus of helping to celebrate and honor the leading Black women figures of the city. They have Mabel McLean, the president of Dr. College. We have Kathleen Crosby, one of the superintendents in Charlotte schools. So she honored them. She honored them by using Scan Center to teach young people about the lofty leaders of the past, but also the papers right among their hips. Well, also with the National Council of Black Studies, he also supported women who are participants in Black Studies. And also Dr. Sonia Stone, master teacher, does her students really follow her around. She was such a great.
Yeah, okay, we got your message,
But
but
they did not want to give
ain't
her
how to respond.
know your story a little bit. So Dr. Roddy,
But I understand it because I'm
they didn't
familiar
know
with
the
what you're talking about.
organization. We are going to do all measures and act measures.
Did you have-
They did, and also the students protesting. So eventually, 1980, she was granted tenure. And Dr. Roddy just said that she had a much nicer family.
Yeah,
So they support other women in Black studies as well. Over time, 10 years, UNC Charlotte celebrated 10 years of National Council of Black Studies. And that homecoming is there. And in those 10 years, some of the things
for future purposes.
Black studies took a really more traditional field with foundation support.
right. The audio is good.
Cousin Elba, cousin, I'm trying to talk to you.
Ann wants to say something to you.
Hi, cousin Elba.
So Dr. Roddy.
I wrote, hi, Janet, good to hear you.
She was finally retired.
Yes, I'm trying to respond to you for future purposes. I've never done this. How do I send to you? No, but I want to know, how do I send to you? How do I respond to the text? I type it, but I don't know how to send it.
Become a full-fledged program in most universities. You have at least one Black studies course, and you have program, have department, program. Some of these statistics, going on.
Well, it was under Elva Riddick.
The UNC Charlotte is like having a program in third grade. Not in the city, not about the nation.
How do I? Well, I pop up off and on, but every time.
Afterward, build a program,
Yeah.
Cyber programs in the nation.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
So, what is the latest and what is the modern day race when we get to the first part of it? So, names, I got this idea of like I got Maxwell should be considered a
I see two and everyone in that hour. Yeah.
He followed in a long tradition of women who had civic courage, stand up to race, and work to advance her race. She didn't run away. Legacy. Now, Dr. Roddy did not like to do what I said legacy that way, but there are certain legacies.
Okay, hold on.
So one of the things you see is
Every time I try to scroll down, it wants to disappear. This is
between Dr.
irritating.
Roddy in 1980, Bradford.
Maybe it's my finger, I don't know.
So she won the Democratic primary, was not successful in the final election.
Will an eraser do the same thing?
So is the president.
Okay, let's see. What can I
She ran a
do?
program of educational access.
I'm gonna try, but it keeps
And so
wanting to
there
go
she is,
away.
Jesse Jackson.
Okay, well, I'll just keep diddling with it and I'll send it to you and I'll send it to Ellen.
Studies program. Right there. She accepted the potential for elected office. So I want you to show the legacy are the way out. Another thing, Dr. Wright, expert, to contact us.
Okay, follow up. A lady's name is checked, but I don't remember checking. Is that a problem or is that just there? I think she's the host.
And many other service and public services as well.
I'm on your name.
I want to talk about some of the actual legacies on campus. So in 1986, Dr. Herman Thomas started
Rosie, I think that's the name.
Still around today, very much. It's a summer program.
Well, your name is highlighted and I'm going to hit that, okay?
This is the first that has been successful for all these years. So that is the
I did.
Oh.
Oh,
And also in 19.
oh, your name is in the two box now, E. Janet Riddick.
Well, So here we have two tangible parts of the university.
I don't see that. I don't see that. No, I don't see.
From Dr. Roddey's idea of and I also wanted to show this tree type.
I don't see anything but a smiley face and 3 dots. It's not on my screen.
So I wanted to show that Davis from student, the affiliate of former affairs, is part of it. You don't feel that when they went to school, this was their school, and Dr. Roddey was a part of it. So if we talk about people.
Mine is not doing what yours is doing. I have a touch screen, and when I touch the message box, nothing pops up. The cursor just lands where my finger hit. But that's okay. That's okay. I was just trying to respond, and I didn't know how to send it. I typed it, but
So I also thought, how can we be?
Okay. Well, again, my message was basically saying that hopefully there'll be a recording with a clearer audio that she can connect us with. So. Yeah, we heard her first lecture and she was brilliant. She really was. And it's unfortunate that we can't hear it this time. No, it wasn't on Zoom, but she was doing, about the lady, Dr. Roddey. It was very good. She was at Wake Forest. It was a lecture. She was not on Zoom, to my knowledge.
Miss Ann. Miss Ann. Miss Ann.
Uh-oh.
Miss Ann. Please mute yourself.
I tell you what, let's just hang up. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye. You too.
Miss Ann.
Davis, who expanded upon Dr. Roddey's idea of servant leadership to build even more to make the university more welcoming and engaging place to learn. So that is where I will end. You think how we can all be modern day people. What would WWBD, what would Bertha do, right? So, I went in there and I was thinking, just something I want to do a little bit. So these are some of the books that I my sources. The first is the history. This just came really hot up. History of Black studies, but it doesn't mention Dr. Roddey as much as it should, I think. So I feel like it will share information. And we also have an epigram book of beautiful tribute, Dr. Roddey from Michigan. We have Jarvis, book on Black pedagogy, looking at Carter Stevenson and how those teachers were activists, which I helped support that idea. And Abraham Henry's book on the Black student movement. Now he's very hot right now. He started with the Black Studies and 2 great books on the history of Charlotte. One is through Bonnie Cone and one I do so much in my research and Savard on the history. So that is where I'm going to stop and see if we have any questions. I want to thank everybody. I hope we learned some more about Dr. Roddey. We are very Oh, should I open up the question?
If you shut it off, I think if you shut it off, the meeting won't end.
I will now take questions from the audience as well as questions from Zoom. So Dr. Maxwell-Roddey, from audience member here, and Dr. Ed will monitor the Zoom chat. So anybody joining us virtually, please place your questions.
While you're walking up, I do want to thank Dr. Gutierrez for starting the Bertha Maxwell-Roddey lecture and for his service. hope so. Started African History Society. So we'll start with I just wanted to thank you. Yeah, Dr. Jordan, who is joining, Zachary also here as well. Oh, okay. Okay. First of all, let me thank you. That was wonderful. You know, a lot of work. The first question is, considering Dr. Maxwell-Roddey's remarkable achievement in pioneering leadership in education, the Charlotte community, and national, how would you describe her? Now, I know that you said a little about it, but of course, how would you? I think you can see her legacy in actual buildings, but again, you can see her legacy in the faces of her students who are here after 50 years, 40 years. Mary in the front row, who come to visit her and bring her breakfast. You watch out for her. You see her legacy in the building of relationships. You see her legacy in promoting this idea of cultural advocacy, using allies, using things to get things done. So she may not have been on the front steps marching, but she was in the room making things happen. So that legacy is continued today with the work behind the scenes. And we can all learn what those kind of negotiations that she did. She also left a legacy of educational excellence and economic studies, and making this university your own university by demanding certain things, by using your own self as a form of activism and advocate where you are. So all of these things was her legacy. Her kids, other legacies in the data, we can go on the top in the public schools as well. But with Africana, you definitely see it right in the faces right there of her students who it went beyond the call of duty to help me write this book. From getting pictures to interviews to finding other people from the interviews, they did not hesitate to help me. And I'm so honored and be able to get to know them very distinctly in their own lives as well. You can get the legacies of the careers that you've had throughout the years as well. Thank you. Are there questions from the audience? Questions? Dr. Davis?
Sonia, you can't turn the television on or open your newspaper these days without observing this alleged fallacy of something called race theory. And my question is, how are we as scholars going to keep this false concept from overtaking legitimate disciplines in African American studies and African studies? How are we going to fight back and be successful in continuing the disciplines of African studies and African American studies in higher education?
Thank you, Dr. Davis, for such a poignant, timely question. I think I would just say from my own opinion, and I'm not employed by the African Studies Department, I would say we need to go back to our core idea of community activism. We have to bring African studies back to the community. We are poised in a perfect position to share the actual. And critical race theory is simply a theory to understand race, not monster or people think it is. And try to help people working with scholars and college education to bring African studies and our unique ability to speak about to counter that, go even more beyond our beautiful campus walls. I think that's what we're going to have to, may eventually be, a resource for people to actually learn once they get to college. And so we'll have to keep it in. Fortunately, we are able to do that. And we hope that the political ties will change, in my opinion, so that we won't have this fight. But I think that definitely has to take a 4-step role in making sure the actual evidence of ways of discuss well beyond campus. Definitely look for other ideas on that question.
A comment / question from Tamika Ali Johnson, and she wants to know if you would be willing to make your slides available as resource for people to learn more about Dr. Roddey, but also to learn more about the history of that.
Sure, but really, I want to thank the African Studies program. This program is also on YouTube and it's recorded. I'd like to end my slides are on, so they can get the whole thing. I think technology is wonderful. So they can definitely actually put it on YouTube and get it whenever they want to.
We don't have any other questions in the chat, but if anyone else in the audience has a question, we can go around the microphones and be happy to.
My name is Bertha, and I want to thank you for your talk tonight. And the question I have for you is about the Afro-American Cultural Center. Did you say that grew out of a student project that Ms. Roddey actually helped them?
Actually, it was her colleague, Dr. Mary Harper's dissertation. And so she was wanting to implement that project as part of her dissertation. And so they actually had to do the center. So she got Dr. Roddey to help her get it off the ground. With support from Body Home, some of the administrators at the university. And it was in an office, basically now Spirit Square. And they had a few very dedicated volunteers. That's a lecture. So very dedicated volunteers who were being artists from all over the country and performing arts as well. And so she worked with them, raising money and inviting board. She also had students on her board, who played board members, who definitely made a stand, of course. And so she eventually the moved in 1986 to the Little Rock Church on the Harvey Hampton. We also want to honor Dr. Mary Harper as part of the 100.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions on this side? Hello,
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey, for all of the information on all of your work, and it's one of your mentees. I wanted you to talk about the extra work that's often required of Black faculty, and you talked about some of the work with the students, but how the university can and should support Black faculty.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Lewis. My mentee was doing something great thing. Well, what are the actual roles like faculty? Following from Dr. Roddey, and again, helping Dr. Carver, who was having some trying to push through this idea, this very unique idea about a program to very just part of being advocates for other Black faculty, being advocates for other students. That is not written down on the requirements or even harder requirements, but it's often what Black women faculty have to do. They have to stand in the gap for Black students, stand in the gap for other faculty, and also push for their own, try to get university to honor their own scholarships. To also be a marketing community, to address some of the needs of the community that relate to people back as well. So they definitely have a tireless job, but it's very rewarding. To breath, you see mentee just surpassed everyone's expectations. It's so great that you have been. It's just great. So that's the reward. But it's definitely off the books work for Black women faculty to do so many things to help, again, help this university become a welcoming whole for all.
Yeah, question from Brendan.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ramsey, for the presentation. I do have a question on the issue you talked about. So, you said there was a massacre of 3 students in a neighboring college and retaliation. The students of UT Charlotte, they lowered the American flag and raised the African flag.
And to honor those students.
Yes.
That have passed the year before.
Yes, exactly. You hinted that Judge Bonnie Cone was such an advocate for African American studies that it didn't get like real crazy on campus and kind of settle down. Could you maybe talk about what happened on other campuses, other students, and how they honored the students who died in massacre?
Oh, yeah. So this is a part of a movement that all across the South, all across the nation, of students demanding that universities offer Black Studies programs or Black Studies, Black Student Union. Several will be in Chapel Hill. They have marches. They have building takeovers. You have at Duke University, I think they support their own university. You have San Francisco State, where it started, you have Vantage marches. And in some cases, there were snipers firing, and university systems, they were, can you imagine having all these protests, what are they going to do? People literally locked themselves in the building. And so you see that could have easily happened when you were in Charlotte campus. But Dr. Bonnie Cone is a negotiator. He was able to hear the students' demand, made them to the administrator. Now, was it perfect? No, not perfect. But she was able to be a voice. Recently tried to get administration to listen to very, very valid demand to get them started. One of the big wins they have is getting the Black Studies. They could have gone in a different direction. So other Black Studies programs, they were not supported by faculty. They were floundering. So that's one way Dr. Roddey was so adamant about forming the National Council of Black Studies to help support these students, support these other programs.
10 more minutes. So please ask your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey, for your lecture. It was fantastic to listen to. As historians, it's not often that you get to have face-to-face conversations with your subject matter or subject matter. So can you talk about your research and what that was like to be able to, have oral history interviews with Dr. Roddey and her students, and how that influenced how your book is turning out in this lecture?
Yes, I would love to. So I started doing my research, and I started to talk with Dr. Roddey, and he had to warm up. Yes, it took me a while to get in. But once I got into when is our book going to be done? So I felt the industry really started to bring in students for me. So one thing as a historian, we have to base our records on sources. And ironically, you can find sources from the 19th century easily, but sources of recent history, people don't think it's history. Neat people are not a friend of historians. They want to clean out their figures, clean out all the records. And so I'm looking for records key roadblock in this journey. So I have Dr. Roddey would say, then you have to go look for this. You can also find collaborating records and finding those as well. But one thing was interesting about as I would go visit her every week, literally, she would tell me something new, get created, get initiated, she had done. And then I had to go back and get to them. So she's also been on 15 nonprofit boards in Charlotte. She's really helped kind of move the Arts and Science Council, that's the great Arts and Science Council a lot. So as a that research, so many different aspects. She was young, she was president of her chapter of the Southern Negro Congress. So that's another aspect of research that. So it's been an exciting journey, ups and downs, and also working with Dr. Roddey, and she's seen her non-approval spirit. She did not give up. Retirement is not a word it's like this. No. And that she will go. She will keep going. And she wanted her story told. And how many people she touched throughout her life, what a life she had had. From her students, from her stores, and just made up with an entire lecture. From her fellow teachers, all have been touched by her in terms of, so it was exciting to try to talk to them as well. And most willing to talk with me. And it's interesting stories, stories about the experience they had, and some funny, some not, but that she really took their life. So, and it's been a growth experience for me as a scholar to be in the aura of leadership that way, and she has an aura of generosity as a president. To soak that in and learn about leadership from a firsthand account, what it means to do the work behind the integral work of what it takes to be a leader, not get the prizes and things, but coming to the days that encounter motivate people. She has such an ability to motivate people to do well, things far beyond their job. They've never said, that's not my job. I mean, she had people help start, like Dr. Thomas, start a center. He's a minister, he's a professor. Yeah, he helps build Afro-American culture. I'm looking at him and just think about him to be able to do that. She knew they did that because they knew she was fighting a good fight, fighting a good cause, and they wanted to be a part of that. But to be able to get people to join in with you, yeah, definitely had that gift. It was amazing to see that in action. See when she would just call one of the big leaders of the National Council Black Studies things when he would answer her call. You know how much respect they had for the work that she has done over the years. So it was indeed trying to not be like her, regular human being, but it was kind of hard to be her. But she is all worthy. She was not, and also her own personality. She did not, I might soak that in that about the president of the national authority or always be, but she's just so very down to do, and also something to look forward and not be caught up in your titles and groups and all that. But she was just talk to anybody, everybody. That's how she grew up, learning to learn from anybody, everybody. And yet she had dinner with president and with regular students. She just so that's some of the things. But if you ever have a chance to talk with Dr. Brown, if you don't get with her, you would just be really blessed to be in her presence. She is a great figure of what a leader, a leader.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Did you find any accomplishments that were unfinished?
Unfinished. Well, I think her legacy still builds on, right? So again, things going on, and I'm studying writing. I think they're continuing on. I think some of the things she wished with the National Council of Black Studies was to get more of a presence in the public schools, which if she was able to do that, she might not have some of the issues we have today, right? But that's one of the things I think she had done. And she also was, once again, centered that it get more, and I think I see more of it now, more of it in focus. For a while, it began expressed as a regional, beautiful parts. She wanted to maintain the community because they wanted to get the Afro-American culture and really to help children because they had been their own neighborhoods. It was urban neighborhoods gone. And then their schools had been closed. So they didn't have any cultural landmarks to learn about Black history or Black culture. And she wanted to center, she and Mary Harper wanted to center to do that. So I think wanted to continue to keep that local from good, everything. So other legacies, but sometimes when you create an entity or an institution, it grows on its own, flourishes on its own without. And so also you have to do factors of the house city of Charlotte, the rise of Black middle class and reverse migration of African Americans really influenced as well.
Okay, with our speaker, I think we have time for maybe one more question.
I really just have a statement. I think this was a fantastic presentation. And I thank you very much for it. I did have one particular question. When they decided that they were going to form UNC Charlotte, and they had the Black college, what happened then? And why would they do that and still be about putting a Black studies department?
Okay, all right, so going back a bit. So the Black college really kind of started in 1949, parallel with Charlotte. So Charlotte College most attractive is becoming a junior college. Eventually, it has to be part of the UNC. The Harvard College gets the name change, Mecklenburg College, but it becomes part of Central Piedmont Community College we have here. But that's a story in itself because they still that Carver College welcomed the faculty, and the faculty were all brought up. Bonnie Cone Foss, they have one of the faculty brought to community college. So they lost some of the faculty there. And then Carver College started in the basement of a high school there. So there was a discrepancy. So Dr. Roddey's coming in to not just like study, coming to a desegregated university, he had to make it real, right? He had to make it work. And so that's on paper, but it was actually in a lot of ways. So that's a lot of things we have to really, you have to make it really work.
Good evening. So firstly, I'd just like to echo the comments of everyone else in the audience. Dr. Ramsey, your work was phenomenal. As an alumna of UNC Charlotte and as a member of Delta Sigma Theta, I'm extremely proud to experience your work and to hear about Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey's legacy as well. So thank you for that. As mentioned, I have the proclamation from the City of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County that I am pleased to read to you now. Whereas the Africana Studies Department of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte has served the world, nation, and community for over 40 years by educating generations of students and the public on the multifaceted experience, histories, and cultures of people of African descent and their critical challenges and emergent issues worldwide. And whereas Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey has significantly contributed to the advancement of Africana studies nationally and regionally, and the Africana Studies faculty at UNC Charlotte inaugurated the Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey Distinguished Africana Lecture on September 26, 2008, on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of UNC Charlotte's Africana Studies Department. And whereas the goal of the annual Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey Distinguished Africana Lecture is to enrich the intellectual life of UNC Charlotte and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg region. The lecture shall be an annual intellectual and social platform for scholars, students, community leaders, policymakers, and all residents to be informed and to deliberate on the pertinent issues facing African-descended populations locally and regionally. And whereas the 13th Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey Distinguished Africana Lecture will be held on October 27, 2021 in the McKnight Hall of the Cone University Center, UNC Charlotte, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And whereas the lecture titled Building the Block, Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey, Charismatic Advocacy, Black Studies, and the Promise of the Desegregated University shall be delivered by Dr. Sonia Ramsey, Associate Professor of History and Women's and Gender Studies at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Now, therefore, by Alexander Lyles, Mayor of Charlotte, and George Dunlap, Chair of the Mecklenburg County Board of County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim October 27, 2021 as Dr. Bertha Maxwell-Roddey Distinguished Africana Lecture Day in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County and commend its observance to all citizens.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Wallington. We're honored that, once again, that you could join us and that the City of Charlotte has recognized the importance of this event, not only for the university, but for the broader community. This concludes our program tonight. Those here in attendance, we hope that you'll join us for a reception downstairs to 10. Thank you very much.
It's not even allowing me to close it. I said it's not even allowing me to close it. It's not allowing me to close it.
That's crazy. Yeah. Can you just log into this system? Zoom? No, let me try this. Let me kill Zoom and try it.
I'll be right back.
Hello, Stephen. Stephen Snipes, Stephen Snipes. Hello.